Aloha, it's Bill Best with On Exhibit once again, and we're kind of going to talk about what's on exhibit and what's not on exhibit here at the Maui Ocean Center, our wonderful Ocean Center. And we have Tapani Vorahi.
That's correct.
And you are the...
I'm the general manager at
General
Maui.
manager.
Yep.
You were on my KAKU show not too long ago with John Gorman.
That is correct.
And we had the most fascinating talk, and we discovered things about the Ocean Center we had no idea that that sort of thing was going on. I'm talking about aquaculture and protecting the reefs and you know, basically taking care of the wonderful creatures of the ocean. Tell us about the Ocean Center, when it opened up, and what you feel your purpose is, because it's more than just entertainment or displaying fish and the like.
I appreciate that, Bill. First of all, we are not an entertainment business. We opened in 1998. We are part of an international company called Coral World out of Tel Aviv, out of Israel. We have locations internationally in Eilat, Israel, Perth, Australia, Palma de Mallorca in Spain, and of course Maui Ocean Center.
Wow.
So quite large in that sense, but what makes really Maui Ocean Center special, you know, we are really focusing on the local community here, and really it's about educating people and inspiring people about the Maui's endemic marine life. So it's very unique in that sense. We have an open water system, so most of the excuse me, most of the aquariums are closed water systems, so this makes us very, very unique, and there's a lot of benefits to that for the marine life that we have under our care.
One thing that people might notice is that you have no trained seals, you have no orcas. None of that is going on here, and you, like you say, your purpose is more education.
Right. Yeah, we are actually very fortunate to be located here in Maui. I consider Maui to be a very special place. It's very progressive in terms of its conservation, environmental initiatives, and you know, Maui has a ordinance that bans cetaceans in captivity. So we are very proud to be part of this ordinance, and we actually proudly disseminate this message to everyone who comes to Maui Ocean Center.
Well, you might notice some of the pictures that are on display. This is one of your newest display areas, and you have some of Susan Middleton's work up on the walls. Her work was recently displayed at the Schaefer Gallery sometime. Fascinating stuff, and well, we're anxious to get, we only have a half hour, so we're anxious to get through the facility and hopefully get a look behind the scenes, the areas that people mostly don't get to see.
We would be happy to show you that. We are very proud of the Papahana Mokuakea exhibit. Uncle Sol Kaho'alaha, he was instrumental in helping us pull this together with very tight schedule. Pew Charitable Trust also helped us tremendously in pulling all this together. And if you look at the map, we really wanted to show the correct orientation of the Papahana Mokuakea in the context of Hawaiian main islands. And this is really the message we want to make sure that people get here, you know, when they visit Maui Ocean Center, that there is a large natural resource here that really needs to be preserved. And what really is intriguing to me personally is the, if you look at the Tropic of Cancer here, you look at this one coral atoll here, it's called Mokumanamana. And that used to be the demarcation between the spirit world, what was considered the realm of the spirits, and realm of the human beings. The reason for that demarcation was that one could actually navigate by sight up to this point. Beyond here, you actually had to navigate by stars. And this is considered a leaping off point in the Hawaiian culture. So it's a very sacred place. There's a lot of cultural artifacts. So we want to make sure that we really showcase the beauty of these natural resources that we have here in Hawaii. And this is what makes Hawaii really special. And if you look at behind you, we wanted to make sure that we actually showcase the bipartisan effort. It was actually President Bush that enacted the sanctuary. President Obama expanded it. The boundaries to 200 miles, and recently we collected over 13,000 names to make sure when Interior Secretary Sinki was reviewing the sanctuary, if it actually was going to remain as one. Looks like it will be, so we are very fortunate to have this condition remain.
Well, if you are visiting the Maui Ocean Center, give yourself at least a couple of hours, if you can, to walk through the facility. They've got food available and everything, so you can make a day of it, bring the kids. One of the cool things for me as a senior and Kama'aina is that you have special discounts. $7 to get in. How can you beat that?
Yeah, it's really a no-brainer, and I would even go a little bit further and recommend everyone get the annual Journey Pass. So you can come in anytime you want. We have amazing array of different activities. We have a lot of cultural practitioners in the place. We have converted our landscape into indigenous Hawaiian landscaping, and we are starting to do complimentary, plant tours, audio guides, which is translated to Hawaiian language, which is complimentary to anyone who wants to learn about the endemic marine life in Hawaiian language. So please come and check it out.
Pani, tell us about the Institute.
Last year we started Maui Ocean Center Marine Institute. It's a 501c3 corporation. This has been on our radar since 2002. We really felt that this was the time to start it. It's based on 3 foundational pillars. Number 1, Turtle Rescue Center, which we have in the back. I can show you that shortly. And we are also turtle stranding responder on the island of Maui. We work together with NOAA. We are currently operating under their permit. We're also working together with UH Maui College on the stranding. Second foundational pillar is coral repository. So this is in essence of ARC or rare endemic coral, and this is really very important for the state of Hawaii because this is a fail-safe against the global warming what we see happening already. And the third one is fully integrated curriculum with the DOE and educational system. We really want to make sure that STEM-based education is integrated.
Well, I imagine you've got crowds of school kids coming through here all the time.
Yeah, quite a lot actually.
And the coral is such a concern for all of us here now, the coral bleaching. What are you guys doing exactly to augment some of the problems that we're having with coral?
Glad you asked that. Actually, 9/11/2015 is the date that I remember because we took the ocean temperature measurement. That was actually 85 degrees Fahrenheit. As a result, about 45% of the coral reef bleached around the Hawaii waters, and it still remains that way. We actually flew in a seawater chiller, which we placed on top of our living reef building, which is all live coral. This is the largest coral exhibit or collection in the United States. So naturally, we wanted to make sure that it stays vibrant and healthy. And later on that spring, spring of 2016, we shipped the second ocean water chiller. And as of today, I feel that we have ability to safeguard the coral under our care if the ocean water temperature rises to 87, 88 degrees of Fahrenheit. What a lot of people do not know is that since we are an open water system, we are in essence cooling down the ocean water. Of course, that's an exaggeration because we are adjusting the water flows in the system. So we are making sure that there's optimum temperature for the marine life under our care at all times. So this is critical for the safety of the endemic Hawaiian corals in the state of Hawaii.
Well, we have to thank you for that. And hopefully we can take care of our reef system and bring it back. Is that possible?
There are issues that we have no control over. There are some issues that we have control over. I just came back from state capitol last week. There's actually state of Hawaii. There are several stakeholders, politicians, scientists, environmental organizations involved, and scientific consensus as of today is that sedimentation is number one problem or major threat facing the coral reefs or that coral reefs are facing. So how do we address sedimentation?
Yeah.
I believe that is under our control to a large extent by really looking at watershed management issues. And as we all know here in Hawaii, everything is connected. If you go back to the old Ahupua system and how the Hawaiians used to manage land, it was actually very effective.
Runoff, of course, is a big problem because everything on the land ends up in the ocean. It seems like eventually, we've talked with people who said of huge concern is microplastics that are ending up in the fish. And of course, we've got all kinds of plastics that are floating around in the ocean. And I can't imagine what we could do about the gyre, I think it's called, this huge amount of garbage that's becoming an island out there in the Pacific.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There's actually 5 large plastic garbage patches around the world. I believe it was Captain Moore from algalita.org who originally discovered the Pacific one. Really the way to mitigate that is really look at the supply chain on the plastics and really try to limit the single-use water, plastic water bottles, etc. So how can we really start thinking more thoroughly through the chain of usage in that sense?
Yeah.
The real problem with the plastic pollution is that it does not end up only in the fish. You know, it invades the whole food chain.
Right.
So we end up actually having it eventually. So
Right.
let's not fool ourselves and think that we are far removed from this problem because it is going to hit home even more so.
Well, one thing that we can do as an average citizen is replacing the plastic fast food utensils, anything that is packaging. You can put packaging stuff, your own glass or plasticware in your car. You can put silverware in your car. Just have it ready and encourage people to replace plastic straws with paper straws. They're doing that now. And the other concern is sunblock, because a lot of people, anybody who goes in the ocean puts on sunblock. Some sunblocks are good if they're zinc-based. Others have a product in them, a chemical that is detrimental to the coral. I forget the name of that product.
Oxybenzone, it's a benzoic family. So thank you for bringing that up. Actually, Maui County is working on looking to ban sunscreens that are harmful for our coral reef ecosystem. We were invited to be part of the process and contribute to the process. Basically, you have 2 types of sunscreens. You have chemical-based, which is the benzoic family, or you have mineral-based, which is the titanium or zinc dioxide. So those are a little bit better because they banned the nanoparticles recently. But there are still a lot of unknowns regards to that. So as a result, 2 years ago, we actually stopped selling all the sunscreen at Maui Ocean Center. So we recommend people wearing grass guards and protective sun gear. You have a hat today. And for those people who absolutely need to use sunscreen, be really careful how you use it and put it in strategic places. So that's important. And but like I mentioned, sedimentation and the runoff that you were talking, that is really the major threat that we really need to be concerned because that's very large scale. So it's all connected in that sense. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's move on.
Yeah, I would love to show you the coral.
This is so fabulous.
Yeah, this is, the best part of this is I love to come here early in the mornings and it's quiet and nice and, have a little bit quiet time for myself. That's probably the only time that I can actually dedicate for myself early in the morning, and I can't think of better way to spend it than among the animals under our care.
Yeah, well, it's obvious you love what you do, and we're thankful for that.
Everybody here loves what they do, otherwise we wouldn't be here. So.
Well, you can feel it. It's palpable.
Yeah. Let me show you the coral lab and what we do in the work in terms of coral bleaching and mitigation and fail-safe programs there if you have a moment.
Great,
Let's walk over there.
We have more than a moment. right now we're in the Maui Ocean Center, and what's not on exhibit, this is an area that most people have never seen and probably won't see, but maybe you can explain what you have here, what facility this is. It has something to do with coral, I assume.
Yeah, thank you, Bill. Actually, small correction, people can actually have access to this. We conduct behind-the-scenes tours here.
Oh, really?
They're limited to size because our lab is not very large, and we want to make sure that coral always stays intact, and we do not harm it with our activities. We're really careful about that. So this is our coral lab, our wet lab, where we actually have a lot of coral that is under our care, and we have more rare endemic species here as well. And like I mentioned earlier, we collaborate with DLNR, which has been extremely helpful, helping us, work this program up where we are creating a fail-safe coral repository. They are hoping to use this actually as a model statewide. So this is really, really important for the state of Hawaii and for our future. So perhaps I could ask John Gorman, who is our Director of Curatorial Department, to tell us a little bit more about this. He has been here pretty much from the opening, so he's the person responsible making sure that we have healthy, happy, vibrant coral here. And as you can tell, he takes great passion in his work, and it's not really work for him. So let's talk to John.
So John, you're the curator here at the Maui Ocean Center, and what do we have here?
Well,
I don't recognize most, but I see there you have some coral, but I imagine most of this is coral. Is that right?
that's right. And actually, your point you just made there, Bill, most folks wouldn't recognize most of these corals because the majority of this is like a little pilot project. The idea is to try and work with some of the rarer Hawaiian corals and see how we can propagate them, grow them, and look after them. And that's what this is. And we've started this, and our hope is that we're going to expand it. But let me show you a few. So right here, look at these. Aren't they beautiful?
Yeah,
look at the colors.
I wouldn't know that was coral at all.
Right, so
Yeah.
these are little individuals. They're called, the genus is Cycloceras, and they actually believe that this is a new species. So
really?
Doug Feder is the author of the Hawaiian Coral book. That's the best book, by the way, if you're ever interested in Hawaiian corals. But he's investigating this as a new species. But these were born here at Maui Ocean Center and
Really?
grow here at Maui Ocean Center.
Well, now
So-
when they're born, how are they smaller than that?
let me show you. Good question. Okay, let me show you. So here's where they originated from. If you look here, see this? Even though this looks dead, it actually has little, you see the little tiny
Yeah.
ones there?
I don't know if our camera can pick that up.
But they're like on little stalks. You see? They're
Yeah.
attached. They're on little stalks. And so what this coral is capable of doing is it's capable of like cloning itself, or we call it budding. So you have two types of things going on with corals. They reproduce sexually, eggs sperm in the water. Often that's very timed. It's like after the full moon, after the new moon, month of July, morning time for some of the branching corals, evening time or nighttime for some of the other corals, like rice coral, for example. But this guy, he can reproduce by budding as well. So basically, he's genetically producing a copy, and that's what these guys all are. And these, you can see how small, look,
Oh, yeah.
little tiny ones, right?
Yeah, you can barely see.
Right, so those are literally just a few days old. So.
When you say this is a new species, does that mean that coral is constantly evolving?
No, I think we're just finding
They
out.
just found it.
Yes,
yeah.
rather
So it's
than
a new discovery.
Right, that's
Yeah.
what I meant by that. Right, but the interesting thing is that coral can reproduce by budding, but a lot of corals can't. So what we do is we do the same process mechanically. So in this case, this is what we call Singularia. It's a leather coral. It's not very common. It's in usually the very surgy zones, especially on the North Shore and over on Molokai. But we take a scalpel and we cut a piece and then cement it, as you see here, on a little ceramic stand.
Yeah.
Now this has grown about fourfold from the size it was. So what we can do next is we could then take this coral and plant it perhaps on an area of the reef that needs some help.
So you could bring it back.
Yes. Or we could further divide and make 2 or 3 out of the one. So that's kind of the program, and that's what we're doing. This is in cooperation with the Dar Coral Lab over on Sand Island, HIMB at Kaneohe. The idea is to work on propagating these corals so that we can, at some point, be planting coral back out onto the reef.
Now, does coral have a sensation? Does it have feeling, an awareness in any way?
Actually, yeah, that's interesting you asked that. First off, coral is pretty complex. So it's a cnidarian, it's an animal. It's related to something like a sea jelly, for example. But it's a whole biome. So you have bacteria, viruses, etc. Then you have symbionts. Within the tissue of most corals, there's actually symbiotic microalgae that live within the tissue, and then you have the living animal itself. These guys will react. If we, for instance, this is live food that we feed them, but if we put this in there, they'll react to that. And sometimes what we do is we actually hand feed them with a little tweezers.
Really?
So as soon as you start and you put a little bit of the juice from, say, krill, we put a little bit of the juice in, they all pop open and they're ready. They're like,
so these would pop open?
they open in the middle. The
Oh,
little
okay.
mouths will start to open as we actually introduce food.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
Coral has done well historically. It's thrived throughout the world. It's built massive reefs like the Great Barrier Reef, but it's also got an Achilles heel. And the Achilles heel is actually these symbionts, these algae that are within the tissue of the coral, because these symbionts produce about 70 to 80% of the food source for the actual living animal. They're heat intolerant. So 1 degree Celsius prolonged heat rise over the normal summer temperatures can cause the host, the coral colony, to expel its symbiotic algae. And that is where the weakness is. That's what we mean by it being Achilles heel, because these algae within they're heat intolerant. So when we get those events, which are infrequent, it's not every year. In fact, this year was a good year for our coral reefs. But 2 years ago, we had fairly higher temperatures than normal, and that caused a lot of the coral to what we call bleach.
Well, Tapani was talking about cooling. You have you've established some coolers.
Yeah.
Which
of course.
is.
So on our reef building, we have coolers on the roof. But even this, so this is a small unit if you want. But right here we have a titanium small chiller right here.
Oh, okay.
So the water is running through there before it goes into here.
I see.
So right now the water temperature on this unit is 78.4 degrees Fahrenheit, which is a little cooler than the high you would get in a normal summer, just a little bit cool. A lot of these corals too, I mean, if you look, some of these are actually quite rare. So this is what we call paper coral.
Oh yeah, it looks very delicate.
Very. And actually, that's funny you said that, because originally we only had one piece of this, but because it is delicate, we accidentally broke some pieces off, and what we did was we then planted them somewhere else, and we got more and more and more, and then we realized, wow, we can grow this stuff quite easily.
No, it's amazing work, really.
So this is rare because of depth. So we don't see this like at Molokini, if you're diving there at 40 feet or snorkeling at 25 feet, you only see this if you're diving down, I'd say 50 meters or so
Oh, really?
underwater.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So depth can be a factor. Some of these corals are only found in deeper waters. Some, like this one here, this is, and I only have one little piece of this, but this is an acropora, and this actually came from the Big Island. There's a little area where there's some colonies of this over near Kona, and the idea is let's take a few pieces and see if we can keep them in reserve just in case
Yeah.
something happens,
Yeah.
you know, to these guys.
Like a seed farm in a way.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Good point.
Well, thank you so much
problem.
for giving us this behind-the-scenes look at the work that you're doing with coral. I think time-wise, we've got to move on.
Okay.
There's so much to see.
Yeah.
And again, I encourage people to give yourself an hour or two at least to peruse this fabulous facility, and you can even organize a behind-the-scenes tour.
We do the behind the scenes tours,
Yeah,
most
great.
days of the week. So.
Oh, thank
Yeah,
you, John.
really good. No, thank you.
All right, let's move on. So much to see. There's so many exhibits here at the Maui Ocean Center, and one of them, which has a lot to do with the behind-the-scenes talk that we've had with Tapani and John, is the living reef. And this is a living reef. And Lily is here to tell us more about some of the displays and the fish and the coral. I don't I'm not an undersea person, so you'll have to excuse me. I don't recognize any of the coral. Maybe you could explain what we're seeing here in this particular exhibit, Lily.
Absolutely. Well, great having you again with us today.
Thank you.
This is our shallow reef exhibit. It's one of the first exhibits that our guests get a chance to see here when they visit our facility, and it's very impactful. Kind of like what you were mentioning, it is living, which I think is one of the biggest things that we like to share with our guests. Is if you actually look at this whole rock structure, these are millions of small microscopic animals that are forming this reef. So one thing that we love to share with guests is how it is alive. I think you guys learned about the biology of coral and got a really close up. So kind of what we share is reef etiquette. So when you're out there snorkeling, now that you know it is a living organism and really how important this natural resource is being aware of when you're snorkeling or diving, not touching the reef, hovering up at the top and still getting that really great experience to see these animals. One thing that we love to touch on, not just on this exhibit, but this whole building, is just the uniqueness to some of the marine life that we have with us. Being the most isolated archipelago in the middle of the Pacific, we have a large number of endemic animals, meaning that they're only found here in Hawaii and nowhere else in the world. So that actually makes it very, very unique. So roughly about 25% of our reef fish alone are endemic. And so guests get the opportunity to see them here with us as well as out in the wild, and they're only found here. So I think it makes it even more special.
Well, we're here early in the morning when the Maui Ocean Center opens and people are starting to come in. Kids love this place. Maybe you could tell us some of the fish. I recognize tang. It's a tang.
Yep, the yellow tang.
There's the angelfish.
How about this one right here? I think this one gets the most attention out of all of them here. Any guess?
The Jimmy Durante fish?
That is usually the first guest, if not the second, from a
is
lot of guests, actually. Usually
I'm
the
surprised
adults.
anybody even knows who Jimmy Durante was.
That is our unicorn fish. So the unicorn fish does have that kind of unique projection right on its head. As far as what it's used for, it's actually still a mystery. We don't know, but I actually really enjoy having that mystery to that animal.
Now, tangs evidently and unfortunately have become a very popular fish to capture for aquariums and
Yes.
so on.
So it is one of the most seeked out animals for an aquarium trade.
Yeah, and there's a lot of concern about over collecting of aquarium type fish here.
There is. If you think about the tangs, they play a very important role on the reefs. There are grazers or herbivores, so they are essentially keeping that algae balanced in the ecosystem. So removing that grazer from that ecosystem, it changes everything else, and you'll have an outgrow or an overgrow of algae that smothers the coral. So there's no balance.
Yeah, the fish care for the coral and
Vice versa.
And vice
yeah,
versa.
the coral's providing a habitat and food, which is very important for them.
Well, perhaps we could do a kind of a quick walkthrough because
Yeah.
we're running out of time, unfortunately. A half hour is really not enough time to go through the Maui Ocean Center.
Yeah, we can continue through the building.
Good.
Now, interesting thing about the day octopus, they have a very short lifespan. A lot of cephalopods, which include octopus, cuttlefish, and squid, actually have a very short lifespan. The day octopus is estimated about 14 months.
Really?
Yeah, right?
Wow.
Fun fact. But before their life ends, they actually will reproduce. The female will lay her den, which is actually a beautiful kind of almost string of eggs under either a crevice or a cave, and she'll protect them right up until the end. She'll aerate them or oxygenate them, providing them air circulation, and she's just protecting them, and she slowly just withers away.
And when they are born, how many would there be?
Millions.
Millions?
Yeah, so it depends on the species, but they do have a very large number. But if you think about it, species or animals that have a large number of offspring is probably due because of the low survival rate. These
Yeah.
little guys go through a planktonic stage, and when you're that small, there's a lot of larger mouths that can eat you. So.
Oh, yeah. Fascinating. This one's not very active.
This one's hanging out right now, but yeah, I mean, usually if it is active, you'll see the full change in color and texture, which is pretty amazing. You have the eyes right on the center here in the front, and then this kind of hole that's opening and closing, that's their siphon. So circulating air, but they also use it for jet propulsion. So if you've ever seen an
Oh,
octopus
yeah,
swim,
that's right. Yeah.
that's the
So they
siphon
can be
right up here.
pretty quick.
They can, yeah. And then they also inject ink when they're feeling threatened. But it's pretty amazing that they can change color and texture. So sometimes we'll get a call saying, hey, your octopus is missing, but he'll actually be just camouflaging perfectly into the exhibit.
Well, each one of these exhibits must require a certain special kind of attention. The water temperature must be very exact, and the purity of the water, too.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're actually very unique and very fortunate for our location that we have an open water system here in our facility. So we pump in 1.2 million gallons of seawater every single day that circulates our exhibits. It goes through a very intense filtration system coming in and out. So as far as temperature, we're very fortunate in that sense. The chemistry of the water, we don't have that challenge that we have to actually make our own salt water. It's coming
right,
from our ocean. And
right.
because we are a regional aquarium, these animals are acclimated to this temperature and this water here in Hawaii.
Lily, we're in the shark area, and people are fascinated by sharks. You know, there's Shark Week on TV and so on. Tell us about sharks and what we should know about these creatures.
Absolutely. So we have 6 different species here with us at the Ocean Center. One thing that we do regularly with this particular exhibit, the blacktip exhibit, is that we raise 6 pups every year, and then after the 1-year period, they essentially outgrow their exhibit. And then we have the opportunity to release them back out into the wild. Now, one thing about our facilities, we do have our on-staff cultural advisor, called Dane Maxwell, and he does all of the blessings for our sea turtles, our sharks, our stingrays when they arrive to the Ocean Center, and then he'll bless them again when they get released to the ocean. So I think that's very unique.
Yeah, it truly is.
Yeah, I mean, you don't really hear of that anywhere else around the world. And the reason for that is sharks were seen as an aumakua to the culture. So very many families, they, as their relatives passed, they would take the form of an animal, and that animal became the protector. So sharks were revered as that aumakua.
Is that an animal you would want to be when you pass on?
I would want to be a shark.
Really?
I think they're amazing. Yeah, absolutely. I would be the white tip reef shark though, because that's the only shark in Hawaii that can actually stop swimming. So
You mean they have to continue?
They have to continuously
swim
keep swimming
all
in
the
order
time?
to breathe. The
Really?
white tip is the only special one out of the 40 species here that can actually rest at the bottom. So I would need a little break sometimes.
Well, now turtles, they have to go to the surface to get air.
Yep.
But the sharks have to
Nope,
just
the sharks
keep
are
going.
fish, so they do have gills. But in order to breathe, as they move forward, that water goes through their mouth and out their gills, and that is how they circulate that oxygen. Pretty amazing. But
Now, are there places in the sea where there's less oxygen or more oxygen?
yeah, there's definitely some areas that you would call almost dead zones where there's
Yeah.
not much oxygen, therefore there's not much life. But these animals, as long as they keep moving, they'll continue circulating that oxygen that's found in the seawater.
A lot of people think of sharks as dangerous, and
They
of course
do.
some have taken a bite out of a few boards and a few people too
Yep.
around the islands. But considering how many people are in the ocean and how
Right.
many sharks there are,
Yeah.
it doesn't happen that often.
It doesn't. We do like to share about when incidents do happen. In most cases, it is mistaken identity. So when we talk about this topic, we actually want to share safety tips with people. How can you be safe when you're entering the water? And the two big ones that we really emphasize in is one is the buddy system. Always go out there with a buddy, never by yourself.
Oh, you got it.
And then the second one is murky water. We do see during murky water conditions, these animals are very intelligent. You know, they have so many senses working for them that they do come into shallower waters and look for their prey. So that's not a good time for us to be out there. But we are not on the sharks menu, which is the biggest thing that we try to emphasize. So when incidents do happen, it's usually a mistaken
A
identity.
mistake.
Yeah.
And we always recommend to people, especially visitors, don't swim in murky water.
Yeah, clear water.
Clear water.
And you know, sharks play a very important role. It's very unfortunate that the media over the last few decades have really portrayed this negative animal,
Yeah.
man-eating.
Starting with Jaws.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate. You know, the population is being overexploited around the world, and so they play two big roles. One is your top predator. With any food chain, you need that top predator to continue having that balanced food chain. And then the second is scavengers. You know, they're very intelligent in the sense where they're going after the sick, diseased, and injured animals. So they have an amazing sixth sense right on their snout that essentially they can pick up electromagnetic fields underwater. And they're sensing, you know, when a fish is healthy compared to a fish that's not doing too well,
Yeah.
they're giving off very different signals. And so a shark will target that weaker prey using that sixth sense. So imagine if we didn't have sharks, we would have a very, very messy ocean. There are garbage men of the oceans. They're cleaning up and leaving the healthy fish to continue thriving.
Yeah. Unfortunately, they're also preyed upon by human beings for their fins
Yep.
and for their meat.
Yeah.
I guess some people.
Yep, in a lot of regions of the world, still their meat is being consumed. Really, I think the numbers are closer to about 100 million sharks estimated, if not more, every year are removed from our oceans.
Lily, are you here every day during the week to guide people?
Yeah, so we run the education department, and so we have an amazing team of educators. I'm here 5 days a week, though. I do need a little break once in a while. But yeah, we take care of all presentations around the facility, our private tours, public tours, some of the feedings that we do with our animals, and we're here to just interpret, and especially with the younger generations, just, you know, try to have them be passionate about these animals and help us protect them in the future.
Now, the Maui Ocean Center is open 7 days a week, and that's 9 a.m. to
5 p.m.
5 p.m. And I recommend you come by and, again, give yourself some time to peruse these wonderful exhibits. And geez, we can't thank you guys enough. I feel like we should come back and do the
Do
rest
part
of
two. Yeah.
part 2 and part 3 too. So there's so much to see.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lily. I want to thank John and to Tapani and Evan and the Maui Ocean Center for allowing us to come through and kind of get a behind-the-scenes look too, as well at the Maui Ocean Center, our wonderful Maui Ocean Center. Thank you, Carl Riziki, for camera work and editing and all the good things that he does. And thank you to Larry John. And thank you for watching. This is Bill Best with On Exhibit. Aloha.